So I make that 10:30. So welcome to the weekly live show right here in the Yoga Teacher Collaborative. If you are new today, my name is Laura Green. I am a yoga teacher, a teacher trainer, and a business mentor for yoga teachers. I'm based in Southampton and have been teaching here for about 11 years with a mission to help yoga teachers to thrive. And that is to thrive by serving your community with the best damn yoga classes you know how, and being well rewarded for what you do, energetically, emotionally, spiritually, and of course, financially. In the vein of helping you to thrive by supporting your community, I have brought in Dr. Sam Watts today. Sam is not that far from me. He's just away, Sam, aren't you?
Yeah, Witherings, yeah, so not far.
And Sam has done many an amazing talk at all the weird and wonderful events I've hosted over the years, and it's always absolutely captivating. Sam works really closely with yoga teachers and is actually doing a special diploma in clinical Ayurveda just for yoga teachers. So he's very, very good at tailoring the broadness that is Ayurveda to what it is that inspires yoga teachers the most, and how we can use this for ourselves and for our students. So Sam, welcome. I would love you to introduce yourself.
No, well, thank you for having me on, Laura. It's been a while. Yes, I'm Sam. So my background is in cancer research at Southampton. And I've been, immersed in Ayurveda since childhood. My childhood was, grew up with Ayurvedic doctors and physicians as neighbours and very close family friends. So for me, living Ayurvedically has been something that I've done since as long as I can remember. I don't think I saw a GP until I was about 22 at university and away from all of that. So subsequently trained in Ayurvedic medicine, with a particular interest in herbal medicine, which is a key part of our practice. We've been in clinical practice for over 10 years now, and have over the last 5 years taken that and developed training programs for people who want to qualify in Ayurveda, whether that's in other health practitioners or yoga teachers. So a big part of that, we still have clinic, but a big part of the work we do now is more about empowerment and more about the self-care movement, because I truly believe that if people just pick up and apply just a few simple approaches of Ayurveda, and you see it time and time again that people's health, just experiences really discernible, quite profound benefits from doing that. So that's how you spoke about your mission, and that our mission, I suppose, is about empowering self-care. So there's that autonomy, there's that empowerment where we have the ability to look after ourselves in an effective and evidence-based way. And I think for me, Ayurveda is the most profound vehicle for facilitating that.
Wow. I never knew it came into your life from so early on. Of all the things I've heard from you, I've actually never asked you, how on earth did you end up doing Ayurveda?
Yeah, literally from birth. So yeah,
wow.
Been there for a long time.
It was a path that was pre-laid out for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, hopefully.
So right here in the Yoga Teacher Collaborative, we have yoga teachers who've been teaching for decades, and people who are just qualifying right now. So it's a very broad range of knowledge. Can you just give us a brief one sentence for those that haven't actually yet been introduced to Ayurveda, and especially the Doshas?
Yeah, so Ayurveda is a system of medicine that's about understanding ourselves deeply. So if we understand our doshas, our unique makeup, then we can tailor our lifestyles, our food, our yoga practice, our routines, our herbal medicines exclusively for us as individuals. So the doshas are kind of genetics in a more subtle and energetic way. And if we understand our doshas, but even more so if we understand the doshas of the people we work with, our ability to really home in and customize how we manage ourselves and those other people is just exponentially increased. So it's just that it's a blueprint for understanding ourselves. Is the best way I would describe Ayurveda and the doshas.
Yeah, and just to go into a little bit on the doshas, just on the real simple level, my understanding and most of my training's been with teachers when I've been in India. is that, you know, it's really connected to the elements of earth, water, fire, air, space, and that we all are made of all of the elements. But just like a recipe, maybe I got a little bit more fire, a little bit more earth, and it can be very simplified into, oh, there's 3 types of Vata, Pitta, Kapha, but actually it's more complex than that. We're a blend.
Yeah, and I think that's the key. But I think there's a lot of, if you look at a lot of the Western interpretations and Western textbooks, there's a big movement to almost overcomplicate Ayurveda. And it makes it quite hard to understand and pick up and run with. And if you dial it right back, it's really simple. And exactly that, you know, I'm not Vata, I'm not Pitta, I'm not Kapha. You know, it's like saying, yeah, you've got 2 lungs and I've got 2 lungs. But you can't alter that. So everyone has got all 3 doshas, but it's those variations. You know, why is your hair color your hair color, and why is my hair color my hair color? Why is your preference this and my preference that? Why do I like this food and you like that food? Every single thing that happens to us, from the, you know, the functionality of the cell to our emotions, beliefs, passions, hobbies, and everything in between those, from the micro to the macro, is dictated by our doshas, and all 3 doshas are at play. It's what dosha is predominant, and if we know that, then we can intervene to balance. So you talk about being fiery. You know, if it's in the middle of the summer and you're feeling hot under the collar and you're working too hard and you're feeling irritable, what's the obvious way of antidoting that? If heat is the problem, use cooling approaches, whether that's cooling yoga practices or cooling herbs or cooling foods or cooling practices. So it's a big part of what we do is about simplifying Ayurveda, because it's not about long lists of doing this, doing that. It's a very intuitive, simple way of living if you've got a solid foundation of how it works. And the elements are absolutely integral to that, for sure.
And then to go from that, you were saying that it's really about understanding yourself, you know, your genetics, but also your tendencies. And this is where I want to go into something really specific with it that's going to be really related to the yoga teachers here in this group. Is, do you think that your dosha, and, you know, I'm predominantly kapha based, affects our style as teachers, how we come across, how we present, who we work with?
Yeah, it has to. Whether that's conscious or subconscious, it will always play a role. And you said about you're aware of you having that kapha predominance. But say on the other end of the spectrum, if someone has more of a vata predominance in terms of their genetic makeup, then that's going to dictate the way they want to run sessions, or the way they construct their classes and their practices. And it's likely to be maybe a little bit faster, a little bit, faster pace, more dynamic, maybe more creative. So the way that, in the same way that the dosha is going to dictate the food you want to eat, or the holidays you want to take, or how much sleep you like, it's going to have a profound impact upon your teaching style. And not just in terms of the actual structured practices, but, you know, the places you choose to teach, the number of students you have in a class, the temperature of the room you're in, you know, all of it, how long savasana is for. Is it for a brief minute at the end, or is it a 10-minute practice? All these kind of things. People might, and actually, you know, we had a teacher we worked with very closely last week talking about savasanas, almost this throwaway comment of, you know, I try and get it down to almost like a minute. But that, it wasn't even a conscious recognition until that point of why. What's the focus of squeezing it into just this final thing you do when it ends, rather than actually viewing it as a valued, you know, approach. And it was no surprise to me that this lady was a, you know, really predominant Pitta-esque lady, you know, very, very dynamic practices, very, you know, powerful practices. And the savasana was almost like I suppose I better do it. And that was a very subconscious structuring of her lessons until it became conscious. And I think so it will have to play, I wouldn't even say a role, but probably a profound role upon the way you teach and your style and your way of delivery. And that's, if you know that, it allows you to maximize that strength, but also minimize any weaknesses from being more predisposed to one than the other. Because if you're aware that, okay, I've got a Pitta predominance, and that means there's maybe less of a Vata and Kapha aspect, how can I structure my lesson plans and so that there's a little bit more of those, so it's more inclusive for a mixed group? And I think that's a win-win situation.
I think it's really empowering as well. And I talk to yoga teachers about this a lot, because I think there's in marketing our businesses, people get too set in the idea that we should have a niche, you know, we should market to these people. Whereas I'm always trying to tell teachers to find your flavor and to be you, and to not try to be something you're not. Like when I started teaching, all of the role models I had as yoga teachers, they were very tall, very slim, very wafy, and they would wear like light flowing clothes. And I had it in my head, that that's what a yoga teacher looked like, and that's what it was to be a yoga teacher. And that at 5'2", curvaceous and earthy, oh, I don't look like a yoga teacher, or I'm not wafy. And it fed into an imposter syndrome. Whereas actually knowing that, no, I'm not that. I'm grounding. I hold space. I'm going to make you feel nurtured. So I really think knowing you and seeing it as your flavor can empower you to step into that and not be someone you're not.
I think what you said there, that's where the magic happens with regards to Ayurveda, because rather than fighting against what you're not and being unsuccessful at something, you know, that you're never going to be, why not embrace all of the qualities and magic that come with who you are, who you're designed to be at your core level? And if you spent your life trying to fulfill that model, it would have been unsuccessful and you'd be unhappy, rather than being happy and successful, honoring who you are. And that applies to every facet of our life. You know, if you're married to someone who can get up in the morning and go for a 10-mile run and feel great on it, if you try and mirror that, when it doesn't work with your dosha, it doesn't work with your makeup, it's going to lead to immune compromisation and fatigue and achy joints. And it's not right or wrong, it's just right for someone and wrong for someone. And that applies if we can bring that bespoke capacity into as many functions of our life as possible. Everything feels effortless. You know, Ayurveda goes to great lengths to talk about this concept of effortlessness. But when we're living the right life and we're living in balance with our doshas, everything's organic. It's like a flowing river. There's a real absence of obstacles and friction. And as soon as we begin to notice those obstacles and those barriers, it's a sign that we've got maybe just a little bit of balance somewhere. And what you described there, Laura, is just a perfect example of that, isn't it? Honoring who you are and using that as an attribute and quality, rather than fighting against it. And you know, that applies to ourselves, it applies to the students and clients we work with, it applies to our family, our business, our health, it applies to everything. And that's truly where I think the magic of Ayurveda is, because if we know ourselves, we can optimize ourselves. And if we do that, then it's you know, limitless.
I love that word, effortlessness. And do not worry if you don't know the answer to this question, because it's probably a little bit geeky. But do you know if there's a Sanskrit word that we've translated into that effortless? Do you know what the Sanskrit is?
It's not in terms of in terms of a conceptual understanding. There's a concept called swastha, which you may have come across, which is swasthya, swastha. And swastha conceptually translates as what kind of optimal, radical, exceptional health, effortlessness, flow. You know, the concept of flow, the Western concept of flow, where everything feels it's just happening organically. That swastha is the Vedic concept of that, in terms of our health, our happiness, our lifestyle, abundance. So effortlessness and abundance are two really key concepts in Ayurveda, that we should have abundance. It's not about, you know, winning the lottery or, you know, manifesting a winning ticket, but it's about abundance in happiness and love and fulfillment and creativity. And so swastha is all of that umbrellaed in one concept. And I love swastha is a huge part of what we try and advocate, because again, in some of the cancer work, it's really interesting that when people begin to construct a lifestyle around them that makes them feel fulfilled, then you can see changes in blood work and immune counts. And why is that? It's because their body is saying, I have a purpose, I have a value. And that's what that kind of effortlessness is. It's going with who we are rather than fighting against it. And again, that comes down to the doshas, because you can't get to that point unless you know where you're starting from. And the starting point is always the doshas.
That's an amazing word and an amazing concept. Thank you. What you were saying earlier about, yes, understanding ourselves, our flavor, but also where, you know, there may be the weaknesses, the things we're not including there. And you said a word that's very close to my own heart about making the classes accessible. So if, I believe all yoga classes are mixed level, although I do know of one studio in America that's timetable is, this is a Vata class, a Pitta class,
Oh, really?
and you do an assessment when you get there, and then you go to those classes on the timetable. But just saying, in a normal class, how do I kind of hold my lesson plan? And I've been taught a few things, but empower my students to, within a group setting, know you are more pitta, so maybe actually take out a couple of the planks today and add a child's pose. Or simply, I was taught that maybe varying the drishti, where people gaze in a yoga pose, that gazing down, be grounding, out, be balancing, up, be energizing. So maybe the kapha should look up. Is that going to do anything? Is that going to help our students?
Yeah, it has to, because anything that is going to balance it, is going to help support the doshic makeup of any given person, is always going to bring about usually a discernible improvement, whether that's physical, mental, or emotional. And I think the best way I've ever seen to facilitate that is to ask the people to really tune in and listen to what their body's telling them. If someone's rushed to a class after a frantic day at work, picking up the kids, drop them off, quick dinner, rushed out, and they're feeling frazzled, it only takes a minute of inward looking to realize I'm feeling frazzled. What does frazzled look like? Frazzled, in the Western context, it's stress and anxiety and cortisol. In the Ayurvedic context, it's, a real Vata aggravation. What's Vata? It's light, it's mobile, it's kind of movable. So if you're feeling frazzled, try and just focus on the poses that are really grounding, really stabilizing, maybe slowing the transitions down, and, asking the person to check in with, how are you feeling right now? Have you had a really confrontational day at work in a really type A based environment where the pitta is going to be through the roof? How do you calm that? How do you cool that down now? So when you leave this yoga session, that imbalance has been rebalanced. And I think that, no one, even the best Ayurvedic doctor with 50 years experience, can know someone as well as they know themselves. And I just think looking inwards, I think is something that's not valued as much in the West as it is in the East. And if we really have an understanding of my doshic makeup is this, and because of that I'm feeling like that, suddenly we can just make these subtle tweaks. And I think that's the way of making these group classes much more universally, not just effective, but accessible, in that this is what we're going to be doing as a core. But if you're feeling like this, why not try that? And if you're feeling like that, why not try this? And suddenly it becomes bespoke while still being in a very generalized setting.
And then giving people the permission to create what they need. Like I noticed last week, my class theme was cultivate peacefulness. And this week, my class theme was find focus. But actually, I could have had one basic lesson and allowed people to choose. Would you like to focus on peacefulness today, on focus, or on maybe energy? Yeah. Just give a suggestion that, okay, so if you've selected peacefulness, use this mantra of, Shanti Shanti as we practice. If you want focus on the drishti today, or if you want to be, and actually let people see how they notice, but then that empowered ownership of, so in today's practice, you are responsible for creating this. And that's what you seem to say. It's about putting the power back to the person.
Well, so that, I don't know who said it, but that has nothing to do with Ayurveda, that very famous saying, if you give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day. If you teach him to fish, he'll eat for the rest of his life. It's kind of like with the doshas. If someone tells you to do something, that's helpful in the very narrow confines of do that behavior. If you teach someone to understand their doshas, then they can tweak every meal, every timetable, every yoga, every exercise session, they can customize to themselves because they know themselves. They don't need to be told, do this, eat that, try this. They know how to do it because they understand themselves. And I think I think if everyone understood, I'm not talking about a really in-depth clinical understanding, but people just had an understanding of my general doshic makeup, what aggravates it and what supports it. If everyone knew that, if you could transplant that into everyone really quickly, which you can do, I think we could change the public health model in about 12 months. Because rather than someone with acid reflux, scoffing dozens of, Gaviscons every day, why not just try reducing your alcohol and spicy foods, and don't fix the problem, take away what's causing it, or whatever it may be. And if we knew that, we wouldn't get as sick as much because we know what's causing it. And I think it's not difficult knowledge to grasp. It just needs to be understood in a very simple way.
And I think that's what I've always loved with Ayurveda, that it's not fix the problem. It's not like Band-Aid. It's create a sense in your body and mind that isn't open to disease because you're imbalanced.
Yeah.
Can we take a big jump?
Yeah.
I know I want to cover quite a few topics with you. Obviously, the seasons have shifted. The day before yesterday, I'm now sitting here in a cozy jumper, still feeling cold, and knowing I was talking to you today, I have had spicy porridge for breakfast. I've also got a forest cat trying to yank a door open. Just a tick before she trashes my door. Sorry. She has big claws, and one angry session, my door would be done. Yeah, so we've taken a hard shift this week into cold and autumn. Now, my understanding is that the doshas also correlate with the seasons. And are we coming into more of a Vata time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so now is so at any time of the year, seasonal changes are where any dosha will go out of balance most quickly because there's a change. And of those seasonal changes, this time of the year is the most risky because not only is it a change, but it's a change into Vata. So why now? You think about now, what's now compared to last week? It's colder and it's windier. What's Vata? Cold. Vata's cold and it's airy. It's made up of air and movement and wind. So September, October, November into December is a very Vata aggravating time of the year. It's getting dark, cold, etc. And so, we really want to, so Ayurveda has something called dinachara, which is daily routine, and there's something called rituchara, which is seasonal routine. And again, we're not talking about detailed, structures and timetables, but just some simple things. We're moving into Vata season. What can we do to balance it? Having a warmer, I say porridge, adding in things like maybe some grated ginger or some, chawanprash or some ashwagandha powder, and having a flask of tea we take with us and sip, and making sure that we're having more nourishing foods and things like that, things that are just going to ground and balance and pacify that mobile cold nature of ours. And if we did say 3 things, we're just going to do 3 things that I'm going to do until Christmas. That's living Ayurvedically. It doesn't need drastic changes, doesn't need us to really understand the subtleties of the doshas. It's just a realization that if I implement things that are warming and grounding and nourishing, I'm going to keep Vata in check. And with that's going to come, more strengthened immunity and less compromisation and things like that. So all of us, irrespective of our individual doshic makeup, should generally be adopting approaches that are more Vata pacifying right now. Like you said, you put a jump on and porridge, it's like different. So subtle changes, if we extrapolate them over weeks and months, makes a huge difference to how we feel emotionally and how we feel physically.
I was saying, like, if everybody has an element of Vata in them, everyone can feel aggravated as we come into Vata season. So is there any things that just we could be layering into our yoga classes that just help balance the Vata for people? Would it be slowing it down or warming it up? Because if we slow yoga down, it gets colder.
Yeah, I mean, I think ideally the best way of doing it is slowing it down in a warmer room, rather than speeding it up to warm up. I mean, I think there's 2 things from the yogic side. I think is the really slow, longer sessions, but less poses, less slower transitions, but also poses that really work the colon, work the abdomen, because the seat of Vata is the colon. And if you think very commonly, people, if they're really, really predominantly Vata, it never ceases to amaze me how reliable this is. They will often have a potential weakness for things like IBS, constipation, abdominal bloating, cramping. And as soon as you support, not so much those ailments as labels, but as soon as you support Vata generally in the colon specifically, you see those things normalize. So in terms of the asanas, the poses that really twist and stimulate and compress and then stretch the inner organs, particularly the colon, are really going to help balance Vata generally, but particularly Vata in the colon, which is the home, is the seat of Vata. So slower poses, longer savasanas, maybe pranayama, nice warm room, so that when they leave, they feel they've got that physical stimulation, of course, but they feel grounded, they feel calm, they feel like you said about yourself being a kapha. and maybe that having a slight impact upon the way you teach at this time of the year, that's going to be a fantastic quality, because it's probably going to be, you know, more grounding and Vata balancing in that capacity. So we're not talking about
formed from inside.
We're not talking about massive restructures. We're just talking about subtle shifts that, you know, you do a few subtle shifts, suddenly everything changes very profoundly, and with that comes, you know, better energy, better vitality, better mood, better sleep. It's a win-win.
It amazes me how much stuff comes to us as yoga teachers almost intuitively. So I posted on Instagram about half an hour ago about IBS and bloating and twists without really actually thinking, and because I'm teaching a digestive class this evening, and my classes this week had slow twists and this hug from the inside, but I hadn't connected that intellectually because it was Vata. It was almost like what I craved. So I think it was more of a trusting our own cravings.
I think that applies to so much. Yeah, people usually know what's right for them, but it's called a crime of wisdom in Ayurveda, where you know what's right for you, but another option is easier or more enjoyable or more compulsive, so you don't do it, and then you pay it's 10 o'clock at night, and the third episode of a Netflix series is do I watch it? Do I go to bed knowing if I watch it I'm not going to sleep well and be tired? Do you honor the need to go to bed, or do you watch the next episode and pay the price the next day? We have that inner knowledge. It's just whether we listen to it and act on it. And again, I think if we know the doshas, if we understand ourselves, we just make these subtle changes to the decisions we make, and bang, the whole framework changes. So like you said, that knowledge is there. We don't need to learn Ayurveda to have that knowledge. It's inbuilt into every cell in the body. It's just having the ability to recognize it and act on it. And I think that the doshas speed that up. You don't need the doshas to do that, or Ayurveda to do that, but it just accelerates the process.
I wanted to be selfish and ask a personal question. The way you talk about Ayurveda makes me feel like I can do it. I can fit it into my life. I can do it. Every time I have sat down, and there's been many a long consultation with an Ayurvedic doctor, it's always been in India, and it's been incredibly strict. And you've been saying about, you know, adding a little bit, but I was very much taught the dinacharya and Laura, do it all or don't bother at all. Is there a way of dipping my toe in and getting some positive changes and then going deeper over time? Because
100%. A big part of that, before I get into some examples, is the cultural aspect. You know, in India is a very patriarchal, do it my way or nothing kind of. It's and it's very obedient. If the Ayurvedic doctor says do this, then you do it. Whereas there's much more autonomy in our culture, and that model doesn't work here. It doesn't. You can't be that prescriptive. And I think, you know, it's not practical. Our country didn't grow up in that environment. We didn't evolve in that environment, so we can't be as prescriptive. And you know, everyone, you know, my Ayurvedic lifestyle could always be better, but it's not about having to rise at sunset, you know, do a fire ceremony and everything you do until bedtime being this strict routine. It's just about trying to break the day down, morning, afternoon, evening. And is there one thing, if I just did one thing in each of those time frames that supports me as an individual, not as a textbook or a generically, but me, how I'm feeling right now. I'm feeling hot, I'm going to use something cooling. I'm feeling stressed, I'm going to use something grounding. If you do something in the morning, it could be a self-massage, it could be a pranayama practice, it could be adding something into your porridge, it could be taking a herbal medicine. You do that in the morning, do that in the afternoon, and you do that in the evening. That's living Ayurvedically, because you're balancing yourself across the key time points. So you don't need, you know, in clinic, you know, we don't try and get people to fundamentally change their life or their practices or their structure. It's about making Ayurveda fit someone rather than making someone fit Ayurveda, because otherwise there's going to be too many barriers. And obviously, the more things you adopt, the bigger the game. But you don't, even if you did one thing, if you got up in the morning and you did a self-massage and 10 minutes meditation, that's going to have, there's clear evidence around the effects that has on our biochemistry, our mood, our gut health. So just that, if everyone just did that, that's going to impart a real benefit. If you do another thing, you get an additional gain, and another thing, an additional gain. So 100% with every atom of my body, anyone can live an Ayurvedic lifestyle. with
That's
subtle,
so
subtle
interesting.
changes. And obviously, the sicker you are, if you manage someone with stage 4 cancer, you've got to do a lot more. But if it, it's a spectrum. But absolutely, unequivocally, without exception, even even Boris Johnson going through Petrolgate could find the time to live Ayurvedically. So,
I think that's amazing, because I'll be entirely honest with you, Sam, you run the Ayurvedic Mentor, which is an online, for your own individual online program. And I've looked at that so many times and I have never signed up because I thought it would be too prescriptive. And I remember, I don't get in from teaching yoga till 8:30 at night most nights. And I remember the Ayurveda doctor saying, well, you're going to have to stop that. That's how I pay my mortgage.
Yeah.
And this is why I've never enrolled in your course, because I thought it was going to be all or nothing.
Yeah, nice. And that's, I think that gives, it gives Ayurveda a bad name, because it makes people think that it's this really militant way of living, where if you don't get until 8:30, how can you quit that? It's how you say you work. It's your passion, it's your livelihood, it's how you pay the mortgage. Ayurveda has to fit that, not you fit the model. And that applies to every facet of life. If you're a vegan, it doesn't matter that dairy milk might be really good for you, doshically speaking. It doesn't fit you, you're vegan. So how do we find a way around that? How do we circumvent that issue and get the gain without the confrontation? So it's not, as soon as it becomes militant, it's wrong. That's the way I see it.
And would you tell me now you've got me over that hurdle, would you tell me just a little bit more about the Ayurvedic Mentor program?
Yeah, so the Ayurvedic Mentor is a kind of an online self-care platform that's just about essentially trying to allow us to fulfill our mission, which is helping people embed self-care into their lives. Whilst for us, the triad we're working to is optimizing health, preventing disease, and maximizing longevity. Healthy, that's what everyone wants. You want to live a long, happy, healthy life. And Ayurveda, dovetailed with a variety of approaches from Western medicine and research, has the framework for facilitating that. And the Mentor is a self-care platform for achieving that. So it's a community. We have series, we have 6 and 8 week series, back to back. We've had things on human longevity and Ayurvedic nutrition, and there's herbal medicine training, and there's a Facebook group which is really interactive, and there's meal plans. It's just essentially it's a one-stop shop for Ayurveda and self-care.
And is that open to me now? Or does it open at certain stages?
It opens at certain. We only open at certain times of the year. We're open until Monday, because we've got a new 8-part chakra series starting on Wednesday, and then we won't be open again until middle of November.
So it is open if I wanted to do it now. It's open till Monday for the chakra series.
Yeah.
Cool. And for those people that already familiar with Ayurveda that would like to take it more into their practice, the diploma in clinical Ayurveda for yoga teachers, how do you see yoga teachers using these two? Would it be that the Ayurveda informs their teaching, or that they would also be a yoga teacher and a clinical Ayurvedic practitioner? What's
both ways really, because it's one it's about giving yoga teachers the knowledge of Ayurveda to inform their practice and their teaching. But more so for me, the motivation was because we work with so many yoga teachers, who often say, I've got this client who's suffering with arthritis or stress, or the dad's just died. What can I do? And with some just simple snippets, ask them to take this herbal medicine, try this practice, change this diet. These people get these huge gains with these little tidbits of information. And the aim for me is that if yoga teachers have that knowledge in-house, a client comes to them, I've got osteoarthritis, they can say, okay, try 3,000 milligrams of this herbal medicine, try this medicated oil, this herbal bath, this tea, whatever it may be. And your capacity to empower and help and support your clients and students goes through the roof, because you've got all the profound impact of yoga with these clinical disciplines. And also in terms of helping people to stand out, because in terms of things like new revenue streams, new series, new talks, new content, it's just about helping yoga teachers to really embed a whole new discipline. There's very few people who are dual qualified in yoga and Ayurveda, and I think doing so, it just brings so many benefits to the yoga teacher, to their students, to the health of their students. It's just it's both. It's to inform the teaching of yoga, but more so to give yoga teachers the ability to actually integrate clinical Ayurveda to help people who are suffering in any way, physically or mentally.
Yeah, and with real proper depth, because I introduce my students to Ayurveda a lot. I run a day retreat on it, I run workshops on it, but then instantly at the end, in the follow-up, there is an, if you would like more information, here is a link to Dr. Sam Watts, and here's a link to Julia Chilcott-Coombs. And Julia always messages me going, Laura, have you done one of your workshops again? She gets flooded with inquiries. So as soon as I share a tidbit with my students, there is just this thirst to learn more. And you're right, if I could then say in those group settings, if I was then clinically trained, okay, let's book a one-to-one and let's work with you that way. And I think when you are the yoga teacher and you've been teaching someone for a while, there's trust. And when we then make a referral, it's not always taken up, because it's a referral to a new person. Whereas it's like, let's take this with you and me, but into a clinical consultation, could be really powerful.
Yeah, that rapport, and yeah, particularly a big part of it is the herbal prescribing, because the evidence now around these abilities. So I've got this problem, let's prescribe this, and NHS are adopting these herbs into research trials. And the ability, if yoga teachers can enter into that dialogue, it can even be 10 minutes at the end of a session. It doesn't always need to be a clinical consultation. I can't sleep because I'm really stressed. Try adding this, ashwagandha into the milk with a bit of nutmeg. Clinically proven sleep tonic. Just a 5-minute dialogue, that person starts sleeping better, they're feeling better. You've helped someone, maybe you sold a 15-pound tub of ashwagandha, it's a new revenue stream. Everyone wins. And it's just yoga teachers are so perfectly placed to really propagate Ayurveda in a way that just helps more people in a mushroom effect. And that was ultimately the motivation for getting the diploma accredited and going through all that.
And to really feel like you can help people, because our students open up to us about everything. And so often our job is literally just to listen. But sometimes they're looking for help, and you're like, that's out of my lane. That is out of my lane. Whereas actually you could add that lane.
Yeah, you can add the lane. Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be always, it's not about always running consultations. It's just about snippets of information here and there. Try this, do this, read this document. Here's a guide on what you should be eating. Yeah, it doesn't need, it can be a really small avenue of what you do, but it can induce these profound gains to the people you're helping and working with.
You've linked me into my final question, which has come from one of our group participants, Kate. And this isn't her opinion. I think this is a hurdle she has crossed. So I wanted to know how you would do it. What do you say to naysayers?
I try as much as I can to refer back to evidence. Okay, that's probably coming from more of some of the scientific backgrounds, but so many, I guess there's two answers to that. One is the evidence. People, if they're naysayers, if they're a little bit skeptical, I suppose, the evidence will always, will usually pacify that. And they say, well, why am I using this? Because there's this clear evidence here showing if you do that, it induces changes X, Y, and Z, which are going to help you. And I think people really respond to that because it takes it out of that slightly quacky woohoo, what is this rubbish, into an evidence-based arena, and that helps in one capacity. The other capacity is to say, listen, this has got a time-tested history of use going back 7,000 years. I've seen it work, in different guises over the last 15 years, and since I've been a child. It's safe, it's all reward and no risk. Why not just give it a go? Why not just try this for 4 weeks? If it doesn't work, you haven't lost anything, but from my experience, I've seen it induce profound benefits, and I'm pretty confident in your situation, you're also going to experience a benefit. So what's the risk? And I think usually people are prepared to give it a trial. And if it doesn't work, they haven't lost anything. And I think that's a good way of pitching it.
Yeah, that came at 3 angles, which is really great. Like history, what's the risk? Anecdotal, I've seen this work, and obviously, which is one of the reasons I love communicating with you, that research, science-based, you have a foot in Western medicine and a foot in Ayurveda, and you bring those two together beautifully. I think that is what we have time for today. Sam's going to come into the Facebook group now as well. If you've got some time just to answer any questions, I will share the link to both the Ayurvedic Mentor, which remember is only open until Monday because the new program starts on Wednesday. And maybe this will be my time to do it. And the clinical diploma in Ayurveda, which, Sam, I have to say, I already think is outstanding value for money. I was gobsmacked when I saw the price. It's outstanding value for money. And on top of that, Sam is given us a 10% discount, which I'll put you a link into that as well. Sam, thank you. Any last words, my darling?
No, just say thank you for having me on. It's been lovely to see you again, Laura, remotely, and it's been a privilege to speak to you. Thank you for having me.
No, thank you for your time. Thank you for answering all my questions.
Thanks a lot. Take care.
See you later. Bye, darling.
Bye-bye.